This is Listen Up Home Buyers, the only podcast offering home buying advice and tips from true buyer agents. And now, here's your host, Victoria Ray Henderson.
On this podcast, I'm excited to have our guest who is an exclusive buyer agent. Welcome to the podcast, Dave Twombly.
Thanks for having me.
We are in the middle of a pandemic right now. How are you helping home buyers at this time?
It's difficult, but your timing is pretty good because I was helping somebody today. We are not really doing any showings. You know, we in Massachusetts have a restriction on being out and about. And although real estate agents were deemed essential, so we could be out working, both my broker and my wife don't want me to be out showing properties. And I don't really want to be out there either. I have two small children and I don't need to risk anything like that. I did, however, have a closing yesterday or 2 days ago, and that we sort of got under the wire right before all of the, all the shelter in place stuff happened. It was very strange. It was the first time I ever did a walkthrough in gloves and a mask.
Right.
Today, I actually spoke to a new buyer or potential new buyer, and one of the biggest things we do, global pandemic or not, is educate buyers, first-time home buyers, and try to get people to understand the process. We always feel that educated consumers are better for everybody. So I had an initial phone call today, like all things are normal, with a potential buyer, and help educate her about the process and getting started and what needs to happen in order to start the home buying process. So we can still obviously do plenty of that. That's one thing that we can and have been doing for sure.
Yeah. So it seems like right now the wise thing to do, and certainly the thing that you're doing, is to spend your time and your energy preparing, your home buyer for when this pandemic or whenever you can get back out and show them properties.
Well, I actually have another closing at the end of the month. Everything happened sort of before the shelter in place really took hold. So we were just going through the mortgage process, and the parts of the transaction that I am not involved in day to day, just keeping an eye on. So we did the home inspection before everything really hit, and tried to kept our distance, but it wasn't where we are right now. I honestly I don't know how a transaction will work right now. Part of how we run our business at For Buyers is that we require that our clients have a home inspection. It's part of working with us. If you want to be represented by us with a transaction, it's part of the deal. We don't waive home inspection for anybody. I keep wondering how transactions would go, because I know there are a lot of home inspectors who don't want to be out there either.
Yeah.
One would do a home inspection by himself as everybody sort of waited in their car for him to come out and talk about it. He might FaceTime some key issues or things that come up, but it's going to be hard to find home inspectors, and people to get out there. I know we are also, one of the sort of big changes that happened in the transaction of Massachusetts was that the fire department is no longer sending out guys to do the smoke certificates to check all of the smoke detectors in houses.
Well, tell me about that. How is that part of your home buying process?
That is the absolute last thing that happens in a transaction, at least in Massachusetts. So you have your mortgage, you're all set to go, you have the clear to close, get your money, and the last thing that happens is that the fire department goes through the property to make sure that all of the smoke detectors are in working order, and they sign off the smoke certificate. And we have to have that in hand in order for the deal to close.
That's fantastic, but we don't have that here in the Washington, D.C. area.
Oh, interesting.
The fire department is not involved in any home buying transaction.
In Massachusetts, you can have your money, you can have your check sitting at the closing table and ready to go. And if we don't have the smoke certificate, we're not closing.
Wow.
Now, typically, that is incumbent upon the seller and the listing agent to take care of. So usually what happens, the listing agent will schedule the smoke certificate or the walkthrough with the fire department. Oftentimes you'll see agents have 5 or 10 smoke detectors in their car so they can stick them up if need be, if there are any missing. Right. And then the fire department signs off. So what's happening now is actually it is responsibility of the buyer. After, I think within 90 days of what place being lifted, any buyer who has purchased that period of time has to have the fire department come in and check
the smoke detectors. What we frequently tell our buyers to just purchase new smoke detectors, ones that have the 10-year battery, so that then you know that it's working because you've installed it or had someone install it. Yeah, so that's the first I've heard of that.
Yeah, no, it's totally incumbent upon the seller and the listing agent to get it done, a deal. I mean, I'm not involved in this process at all, except making sure that we have a smoke certificate. There's new language in the purchase and sale agreement that it is now the responsibility of the buyer of the home purchaser to get this done. And it has to happen within 90 days of whenever we lift the shelter in place ban.
Gotcha.
So that's a change, an impact that we now have to educate our buyers about.
Absolutely.
And this is now on you to make sure this gets done.
Yeah. So what areas do you serve in Massachusetts?
So we are located in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is right across the river from Boston. Most of our business is in what I call this side of the river. We're across the Charles River from Boston. Suburbs, Cambridge, Somerville, Watertown, Waltham, everything that's sort of west of the river. Although I have started branching out to the Boston side of the river as well. So for the most part, I think as a company will go, almost anywhere within reason. I'm not going to drive an hour in one direction. When I was a younger, hungrier agent, I would have, but now that I'm fat and happy, I don't drive that far. But yeah, sort of anything around the Boston area for sure I'll do.
That's good. I mean, you have to. I just like you, I'm an exclusive buyer agent. We are licensed in Maryland, Virginia, and the district. And the reason we are is because very often someone will start their search on one side of the river. We've got the Potomac River in our case. And they'll say, I'm not really sure about the commute here. Maybe I need to be looking in Maryland or vice versa or the district or, so if you're not licensed, you've got to be able to serve everybody in all three areas.
Right. And that's different here. At least, we have enough in the Boston area to satisfy us so we don't have to be traveling to New Hampshire or Vermont. But I would need a separate license to do that anyway.
Absolutely. That's right. So you talked about educating your buyers. Walk me through the process.
We work with a lot of first-time home buyers. We've all had our repeat customers and people who have bought properties before, but by and large, I would think the bulk of my clientele are first-time home buyers. Sometimes people have some sort of passing knowledge. The woman I spoke to today, actually her mom was a real estate agent in New Jersey, so she at least had a sense, but I know everything differs by state about how transactions work. So we educate them about everything. The first thing you need to do, this is the conversation I had today. The very first thing you need to do is talk to a lender to see what you actually can afford, right? The conversation started with, I have this much money to put down and I don't know what I can and what I can't do. And, the first thing you need to do is talk to a lender and see what you are going to be pre-approved for and how much you can spend, because every other conversation I would tell you to have after that might be moot if you realize that you are not in a position to buy right now.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
We talk about getting educated in terms of the financial means. And then, I like to educate buyers about houses. One of the things that is one of the pitches that I always make to a new potential buyer is I am never going to make an offer on a house that I have not seen myself. Mm-hmm. And we actually limit the amount of clients that we take on at a time because we walk through every property with you, because I need you as my buyer to understand the anticipated costs coming down the line. So not only are you about to spend $1 million on this house, but you need to know that the roof is old, and in 5 years you can expect to spend $15,000 to replace the roof, or the boiler is old and that's going to cost you $7,500 next year, or the foundation is rickety and we need to get out of here right now.
Right. I've been in a few of those.
We all have. So what you need to be prepared to hit the ground running, because I'm assuming it's been the same in the DC area, but in the Boston area, we're one of the most expensive real estate markets in the world. And it's been a seller's market for pretty much the entirety of my career as a buyer's agent.
Yeah. Mine too. I mean, it's over 10 years.
Yeah. And it's been, it's been incredibly difficult for buyers to properties, because every property has a multiple offer situation. Yeah. People are waiving all of their contingencies, giving up all of their rights. And that's something that we talk about too, is educating about your rights.
Yeah, because the most important thing is to make sure people know, to make sure, first of all, that they're comfortable moving ahead, but to make sure that they understand all the different ways that they are protected. And if they decide to, for example, if it's a condo in our area, brand new, if they decide to waive the home inspection, at least we try to get a pre-contract home inspection in before they do something like that. We just did that last week. It was a very unusual experience where we had our home inspector in the house using WhatsApp, communicating with the buyers who were out in the car. You know, I'm standing outside. We got it done, but just like you, we don't want anybody to ever get into a situation, especially when it's the biggest purchase of their life, that they regret.
Right. I had a brand new buyer who I'd worked with. I've shown a couple houses to. I actually had yet to sign a contract, haven't signed a contract yet. Usually I like to go out to a couple showings first to make sure that they're comfortable with me and I'm comfortable with you before we agree to sign a contract. I always say that we should date before we get married.
Yeah.
And so I had a buyer and we'd been out a couple times and he wanted to work with me, and a property came up that was in a perfect location, right? It was an ideal location for this guy and he wanted to see it. And this is just when everything hit with our shelter in place and, the house was occupied. And I know the listing agent very well. She's very close friends with my broker and with our firm. We do a lot of good work together. He wanted to see the property. I was not comfortable showing the property. My broker was not comfortable with me showing the property. My wife said, you can go show the property, but you can't come back into the house if you do. I decided not to show the property.
Right.
And this is a $1.3 million buyer. So not someone I really want to let go.
Right.
But I said, listen, man, I am not comfortable doing the showing. If you need to see it, I completely understand. I can't be the guy to help you. So he went out with an agent that he'd spoken to a couple times prior to meeting me. He went to the party. He loved it. He made an offer. He got his offer accepted.
Whoa.
And which, made me scream expletives in the background, but it is what it is.
Yeah, that's
However, he was not educated about the buying process by the agent that he worked with. So he did a pre-inspection because the agent suggested that he do to make his offer more attractive. He got his offer accepted. He did his pre-inspection, offer accepted, but then he wouldn't be able to have another inspection after the fact because this was not explained to him. He wasn't educated about the process.
Yeah.
So he actually called me up and he's like, listen, I don't want, I know I'm not working with you, but can I please ask you some questions? And I said, of course you can. And he told me about what happened, told me that he had no idea that he wouldn't be able to get the house inspected after the fact and was incredibly nervous and didn't know what to do. And now he had, I don't know how the process works in the DC area, but here, you put down a binding deposit, when you make an offer. So he put down a $5,000 deposit on the property to buy the deal. And he, the housing stock in Massachusetts is incredibly old. Everything is 100 years old.
Yeah.
He was just incredibly nervous about the deal and didn't really want to go through with it because he hadn't been educated about the process of having a home inspection, or pre-inspection and what that means.
Yeah. So I have two questions for you real quick.
Yeah.
The pre-inspection is a limited inspection.
Right.
And so this agent that was working with him did not explain that in fact was what he was getting. And then, the second question would be, who holds that $5,000 deposit?
So that's the listing agent's firm. Right. So once you get the offer accepted, during the offer, we send an offer and we just send a picture of the check, right? Made out to the listing agent's firm. Once the offer gets accepted, the listing agent, then we deliver the check to the listing agent and they hold it in escrow. Okay. And then that deposit, rolls into your down payment and your purchase and sale.
Right.
So he, I was talking through it and I was, listen, maybe talk to the inspector, see if he'll give you some more insight or more information about the problem, what he saw. But usually, as you said, with a pre-inspection, they're much more slimmed down and you don't get the follow-up that you would with a normal home inspection. And he was willing to lose the $5,000 as a very expensive education and walk away from the deal. And the moral of the story is he wound up walking away from the deal.
Oh my goodness.
He did get his $5,000 back. He got his deposit back. And when this all shakes out, he's going to come back and work with me.
Yay, good for you.
Now this other agent lost out on a huge commission because he just didn't educate the buyer.
Yeah. But I think a lot of times buyers are not given the kind of representation that they're needed. It's almost like fuel for the fire.
Yeah.
So something interesting, though, that you mentioned about having the listing agent, that brokerage hold the escrow or the earnest money deposit. It's not like that here at all.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, we have a settlement attorney or a settlement office that holds that money, or we hold it in escrow for them. Because if the deal falls apart, we try to protect that earnest money deposit as much as possible.
Well, and this is, it's completely different here. So the listing agent holds, and, typically that earnest money deposit is tied to your home inspection contingency. Mm-hmm. So if the whatever number you put in for the home inspection contingency is met, then you could walk away citing the home inspection contingency and get your money back. And the risk that you make when if you're either waiving home inspection or if you want to walk away and you haven't met that contingency number is that you risk that deposit that you put down.
So, that's a completely different scenario than here.
We actually use that as an advantage when we're competing with people who are waiving their home inspections.
Right.
We'll do a higher deposit and a higher inspection contingency, which shows that, we're not really going to walk away from this deal. We're not going to nickel and dime you over small things that come up during home inspection. But, there's a risk involved with putting that money down. Now, had I been his agent for this deal in these times, I would not have done that high of a deposit because I don't feel that we would have needed to, and we would certainly not have waived the home inspection because the market has been softening. And he actually got his offer accepted on the first weekend. I think it was like $60,000 below the asking price.
My goodness.
When he told me that, I was like, well, then you obviously didn't need to waive home inspection because you were the only offerer. But, fortunately, he got his money back. He got an education for sure, and he'll come back and work with me.
So let's talk a little bit about the market. You're saying that you're getting a feeling like it might swing more toward in favor of buyers?
Yeah, and I saw that all of last year too. So in the beginning of last year, 2019, I had an extremely fast start to my year where almost every client got their first offer accepted.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it was great. And I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in addition to working here, which is one of the most ridiculous markets in the country. And last year, for the first time in my career as a real estate, I could easily rattle off 5, 6, 7 properties that sat on the market in my little neighborhood alone. And when we say sit on the market, it means it didn't sell the first weekend.
Wow. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Because everything here, open house Saturday, Sunday, offers due Monday or Tuesday, under agreement by Wednesday, and off to the race next one. Yeah. So places had been sitting for at least a week, 2, sometimes longer.
That's nice for buyers.
And it was nice for buyers. But it was interesting because there were still properties going well over the asking, but the difference was that instead of getting 10 offers like they would 2 years ago, they were getting 2 offers. Mm-hmm. So the intensity was lessening. It seemed to be shifting towards the buyers. And I think that was going to continue, even without COVID-19, I think that was going to continue along this year.
Yeah.
And we really think that once we get through this, it's going to be a buyer's market. Or I don't want to say a buyer's market, but still move even further towards buyers.
I've been thinking a lot about what it's going to be like on the other side. And on the other side is going to be essentially when we get a vaccine. So we're all going to still be practicing some very safe ways of showing properties. But I do think we are going to get slammed with people who need housing because so many people have been putting it on hold. And here, the only people I'm going out with are the ones who essentially won't have a place to live unless we find something. It's a challenging thing now, but I know a lot of people are going to be out there looking for a property in the fall market. So the fall market could probably be like the spring market.
So you think there's going to be pent-up demand?
I do, because particularly, you're in a major city too, but we have a lot of military, and a lot of military, they've got to be here. They have got to find housing.
Do you think that there's also going to be a backlog of properties that have been listed now that are going to hit the market? So even that out?
I've talked to so many listing agents who say that their clients are not putting their houses on the market because they don't want people walking through.
Right.
they've got babies, they have elderly,
Right.
all that stuff. Yeah, I think we are all going to be very busy and slammed, which is why now is the time to make sure that people educate themselves, listen to
Exactly.
podcasts like this one, and ask questions. Interview every agent and ask them the hard questions.
Well, that's exactly the conversation I had with my potential buyer today. Now is the time to get all your ducks in a row. Even not just with your lender, interview home inspectors right now.
Yeah.
So you choose a home inspector you want to work with. Find your attorney. Interview attorneys right now. So you find the attorney you want to work with.
Mm-hmm.
Get all these pieces. I would love all my clients to do this ahead of time anyway.
Yeah.
Which doesn't always happen.
Right.
But now no one has to do except call a home inspector and interview them and see if they fit with your answer the questions that you want to be answered and have personality that you want to work with, and get all your stuff lined up now so that we can just hit the ground running and then hopefully you're off to the races. If you're in the Boston area and you want to buy a house, you should look up Four Buyers Real Estate.
Well, Dave Twombly with Four Buyers Real Estate, thank you so much for joining me on Listen Up Home Buyers. I really appreciate you taking the time.
It was wonderful to be here, Vic. I really appreciate you reaching out to me and wanting me to be on the podcast, and I will look forward to listening to it.
You've been listening to Listen Up Home Buyers, the only podcast offering home buying advice and tips from true buyer agents.